Welcome, everybody, to Cycle Jerks Podcast. This is a bonus episode. We have a major event here in the Bay Area that both Dave and I have participated in multiple times. It's the Mountain Challenge. It happens on Mount Diablo State Park, and it is one of the classics. If you're a Bay Area cyclist, this is everybody tries to set their best time on this day, the Mountain Challenge Day. So we're pleased to be joined by Mark and Raghu of the Mountain Challenge. Welcome, guys.
Thank you very much, Mike. Really appreciate being here.
Thanks, Mike.
Yes. So
wait, I get nothing here?
well, I'm sorry. I do, I got to do a better job at that. I got to get Dave going early. Yeah, sorry, Dave. Dave Dalton is also here, but he's always here, probably guilty of taking him for granted.
Right.
But all right. So, the Mountain Challenge for me, when I was a kid, I grew up racing BMX. And I had no interest in riding a road bike or any of that stuff. All I cared about was BMX, riding in the dirt. And I was working at the bike shop, and everybody would get all excited about doing the Mountain Challenge. Wow. And not me. And so I used to get teased quite a bit from my colleagues. And then finally, they got me to get a road bike and try to do something on the road bike. And the goal was to beat these older people that were giving me a hard time at the bike shop all the time. So that's how I first got introduced to the Mountain Challenge. And
you remember what year that might have been?
It's got to be in the, I would say probably 80, 81, kind of right in there. And I set a time on that day of 58:11, and that time would haunt me for a lot of my life because I fell out of cycling, had kids and started raising my kids, coached them in sports and all this stuff. Didn't really ride that much. And then I got back into it, and I was trying so desperately to beat that 58:11 as an older person. I was way more serious about my cycling, my nutrition, everything. And I just couldn't hit that number for the longest time. But finally I did, a lot thanks to Dave and some of my other cycling friends. And, I had to really fine tune my diet to get there. But yeah, so it was that the mountain's really important to me in my life. It's been a big motivation, I'm sure, for many people around the Bay Area and even in California, because I know it draws people from all over. How did you guys get involved with the Mountain Challenge?
You want to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Mike, this is Raghu, as we introduced you, right? So I started with the club maybe in 2019. Just before the pandemic, I saw people riding with VSBC jerseys on the street, and I said, hey, it looks cool. Let me also join the club, because I started riding 20-30 miles on the flats, and then I got really picked interest and joined the club. Since then, I've been regularly participating in all the events and the rides. Then COVID hit, then that was the only way out. So first year club did not a lot of rides, but I was riding myself on trails and wherever I could. Then slowly I picked up, met a great group here, friends, mentors, and like people to look up on, right? Like people with very much seniors to me, like riding like pros, and I was struggling to keep up with them. I was like, oh man, this is something great. I should be part of this. Then started volunteering for the club. Then I found Mount Diablo Challenge, and I said, okay, maybe I should volunteer. Then I saw Mark leading the event, and the event was really fun. And okay, I'm actually, maybe I did so far only 2 rides up the mountain. I decided maybe that's too much for me. Let me actually volunteer and manage the event. So that way I'm actually aligned and connected with the mountain rather than trying to do, which I cannot. But of course, I'm getting up there. I'll be able to ride now easily. First time it took 3.5, 4 hours I took to get up there on the mountain.
Yeah.
What did you say, 3 hours?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then took 2 weeks break because I was so tired and sore. Yeah, and I said, okay, maybe I should practice. And I see these guys going up like birds flying. So then I said, okay, I should do a lot more riding. Started riding there and then started participating in the event. Last year, I saw Mark, assisted Mark on the event and trying to see what it takes because Mark is trying to also get some time off. And then I said, okay, let me jump in and take the challenge on my shoulders. But of course, Mark is supporting every step of the way. I hope I'll give him some time next year so that I can date
Uh,
myself. It's
hey,
been
but
fun.
I don't want to cut you off, but there's some. I'm very curious because you know, in our little preamble before we jumped on, we were talking about the history of the challenge, right? Well, a couple of things. First of all, you know, there's a lot of listeners for the podcast that aren't from the Bay Area, so they probably don't know how iconic Mount Diablo is, or the history of the challenge. And I gotta say, I've been doing it for, well, I haven't done it in a while, but I've been doing it for years, and I've been a sponsor for years. I don't know the history of the challenge. You said the 80s. I don't know how long it's been going on. It's just one of those things that I take for granted. So if you could share that history, that'd be fantastic. How long it's been going on, why it started,
Yeah,
who it benefits.
yeah, yep. It's 40th year this year. This is the 40th year challenge. So it started 82, I believe, 82 or 83.
There were 1 or 2 years that were skipped, and so
Yeah.
you'd have to go back a little bit further in terms of the actual date. So, Mike, you mentioned you started in maybe 82. That was probably near the beginning. Maybe, you know,
I think it was
I'm
the second one, if I remember right. I think it was
That's
the second
that
one.
sounds,
yeah,
that sounds
Yeah.
okay. I can
So yeah, not
then.
sure if I got my years right, but yeah, I remember it was the second
I,
annual.
yeah, I see the logo, and I honestly, I didn't even think it's gone back that far. So that's incredible. That is good, good, good. Go on.
It's interesting, if I may, the gal that it was started in her honor she died of myocarditis, which is kind of interesting with especially Raghu, you mentioned coming off of COVID and some of the after effects of this vaccine is some people are experiencing myocarditis. So it is I didn't realize that when we decided to have you guys on, and then I started reading up on it. I was
It's
like,
an
wow,
interesting
okay, so
connection.
it's pretty timely in a sense. But yeah, back then it was very rare. And yeah, if you go ahead, please.
yeah, I think Mark can add a lot of color because I just know the fact what I learned last couple of years. Like it's 40th year, it's 11.7 miles, 3,250 feet to climb, and it happens every year around this time, October, first Sunday of October. Mark, you want to add?
Yeah, I think you were still doing the introduction there. So I got involved with the club way back in 1988 when our kids were 4 years old. The Valley Spokesman Bike Club, you know, started in 1971, so they were already going strong. And we were looking around for something to do on the weekend. And here's this bike club event where you can ride with your kids to a pumpkin patch in Half Moon Bay, south of Half Moon Bay. You know, and that's been going on for a long time too, is the pumpkin festival in Half Moon Bay. So the deal is that the family can ride however they do it to a pumpkin patch south of Half Moon Bay, and you can pick out pumpkins. And the Valley Spokesman would put that in a big cattle truck and bring them back to where we parked at Half Moon Bay, and you could take them home. And I have a picture on the wall here behind me of the kids sitting on these big pumpkins when they were 4 years
Okay,
old.
hold on. Clarification. Okay. So you went to Half Moon Bay and then rode to you didn't ride from here to the pumpkin pass because I was like, holy
Yeah.
shit, how did you do
No,
that?
no, 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 no. So the kids went on the back of our bikes in those little seats, you know, and we were
Yeah,
parked at Half Moon Bay. We rode down Highway 1
got it.
to a pumpkin patch.
Okay.
Got it.
Anyway, fast forward, they go through school and everything, and we get busy. And now, when they're a little more independent, we get into our bike riding more, and there's the club. It's always been there. And over the years, volunteer more and more. I was the president of the club in 2007, and back then, the club had handed off the Mount Diablo Challenge. So I'm going to weave in the history of the challenge with this in a second. And then fast forward to 2018, I think I said my wife and I became co-presidents of the club, and we kind of inherited the role to lead the Mount Diablo Challenge. But to go back to some history that we touched on earlier, in the early 80s, maybe it was about 1980, it was 40 Mount Diablo challenges ago, and there were a few years that were skipped. And the most recent was skipping from COVID 2020, but very few were skipped. And the club was approached by the mother of Joan Walt, the woman who we mentioned died of the myocarditis. She was 26 years old, young. She loved riding at Mount Diablo, and the mother approached the club and asked if they could do a memorial ride, and her name and Joan Walt was memorialized that way, and the club did the ride. It was quite popular back then, right away, and so the club remained the organizer for somewhere around 5 years until the Children's Hospital took that on to organize it, and the proceeds from the event went to American Heart Association. And that lasted for a while until the American Lung Association took it on. Chuck Tyler's son, who's Chuck Tyler, is the former owner of Dublin Cyclery, beloved
Legend.
Yeah.
legend, beloved
Yeah.
writer. We love Chuck. We see him at all the centuries and into his 90s. You know, he's just an amazing guy.
It's incredible. Yeah.
And so Chuck's son, Barry, was an employee of American Lung Association. As I understand from Chuck, Barry Tyler took it on as part of his normal work day. You know, he got paid to put on the challenge. And I think that's when it reached its heyday, where they had more than 1,000 people participating, going up that mountain, starting from the Athenian School. And I think it was a good moneymaker as well for the American Lung Association. And then, it was about maybe they had it the longest time. Then Save Mount Diablo took it on in the mid 2000s, I think. They've had it for about 15 years, and as many people know, Save Mount Diablo is a fantastic land conservation organization that's helping to preserve the mountain intact and not letting it divided up for, what it would be. And they did a marvelous job with it, but they realized that cycling wasn't quite their thing. They have more of a land focus, and so they offered it back to the Valley Spokesmen, the original starters of the event. In 2017 is when they took it back, and so it's kind of another thing happened too, is that when the club took it on, the park was getting very concerned about safety on the mountain, particularly after the event. I'm told that I hadn't really experienced this myself, that after the event, people weren't necessarily coordinated in their descent, and there were a few accidents that very much concerned the park. And so the park said, you better do something or we can't allow this to happen. We wouldn't issue you a permit. So the format was revamped to escort riders down the mountain to celebrate at Monte Vista High School, where there's enough space, and Oak Hill Park adjacent to the high school. And that's made all the difference. The escorts, one of our most valuable and needed volunteers up at the top. We have 15 to 20 cars waiting up there to escort groups of cyclists down the mountain after the road becomes divided. And I can go into that detail as you like about how we manage the event. So that's kind of the history and a bit of my introduction at this point.
Yeah.
Proceeds are going where now?
This year, it's varied a little bit. And so Save Mount Diablo, that it had been, as I started off, I mentioned the American Heart Association had it for a while, American Lung Association with Save Mount Diablo, a land conservation organization. They would use that to help preserve land on the mountain. But when the club took it on, it started going more towards a split between Save Mount Diablo, still a great partner with us, both a sponsor and a benefactor. as well as safety on Mount Diablo. So we've done things like invested in road signs and asphalt to try to improve the road. But more recently, there's an amazing campaign that I want to get into some detail with to build more bicycle turnouts on Mount Diablo. And we very much are aligned with that effort for this particular event. So for this year and the last couple of years, half of the proceeds net income from the Mount Diablo Challenge are going to the bicycle turnout project.
Great.
So Mike, those turn out so you can move over when I pass you. Just
Yeah, in your car.
Okay, yeah, in your car.
All right. Well, I could tell you the turnouts that were added, I think it was last year. Maybe it was 2 years ago now. I don't
You're
know.
right. It was, well, some were done. About 15 had been done before last year, and another 30 got done when we got state money, 1.5 million to build those. So now there's 45.
Yeah, it's made such a big difference. I think one of the things that you struggle with while you're climbing, obviously you're dealing with the mountain and you're doing the best you can, which involves heavy cardio, and you're just, and then you have a car or two behind you or something that you have to deal with, and that adds this added pressure. So adding those turnouts and giving the cyclist the ability just to kind of swing a little wide, let the cars pass, it makes it a lot safer for everybody. One of the things that I do encounter, though, is I think people that are driving their cars feel like they're really doing the bike rider that's going up the hill a big service by swinging way out wide around them. And what ends up happening a lot of times is for the person descending, now you're obviously descending at a much higher rate of speed than the person climbing, and the fact that the car has swung wide to be a good citizen to the climber, now they've put themselves right in harm's way for the descender. And I've seen it many times. I've encountered it a couple times myself, where my closest calls on the mountain have always been while descending with a car that's trying to do the right thing in their mind, but without realizing that there's people coming down the mountain too. So the turnouts are really integral part of improving the safety on the mountain. And yeah, I definitely really appreciate the effort there, and it's good to hear that the challenge is supporting that.
Very much so. There's
yeah.
To
be clear to the listeners, though, during the challenge, the road is closed, so we don't have issues with cars, right? So
That's right.
Absolutely true.
Yeah. If you've never done it, come out and try it. It's wide open, both lanes, no cars, so it's completely safe.
There's some detail to that we could add about how that's structured. Would that be helpful?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So would you like to talk about the start and the elite?
Yeah. So the waves, right? So basically, when we get the registrations, we ask for the expected time of the riders, and based on that, we will define the waves of 40 riders in each, and the elite wave. When the elite waves start, there won't be any traffic. Everything is closed, and then they can just go by themselves. There is no interruption whatsoever. As of last year, we had 4 elite waves, and this year we are expecting much more rider turnout. So maybe it'll be maybe 5 or 4 to 5, and then after that, every 3 minutes the next wave is released. And this year, what we did was we put the e-bikes at the last, because last year what happened, the first rider got up there was the e-bike rider. So we thought, okay, maybe we should not put the e-bike in the mix. So we actually made a conscious effort to put the e-bikes at the end, so that there is no interference for those riders really wanted to challenge themselves to go up the mountain and with their timing. So these e-bike riders should not be in their way. So the e-bike would start a little late. After all the waves are done, another 10 minutes of gap, then we start the e-bike. Yeah. Even the fastest e-bike rider cannot catch up to the elite. So that's the idea. to make sure that everybody is safe and everybody is competing in their own category.
And to be clear, the elite waves, they get the benefit of the road being completely closed. So they can take that corner on the left safely. There's no cars coming down that hill. But after the elite waves, there is a sweep. There's a car that follows them. That's our elite sweep vehicle. And that indicates to course marshals that are stationed all along the route, along with the radio operators, that the ride now behind the elite vehicle becomes divided. And so, and it's made very clear to all the riders that that's going on. So now the waves following the elites, they have to stay on the right side of the road. That's because once the elite sweep makes it to the top, we can start escorting down those elite riders that made it up there to the venue at Monte Vista. And that's the only traffic that's coming down the hill at that point or behind the escort vehicles.
Got it. Yeah.
Let's go. Let's talk about that a little bit. Sorry, Mike, but how many people? So you said at its peak there was 1,000 something. What are you expecting, or what was it last year? What are you expecting this year?
Okay, it kind of waned for a while with Save Mount Diablo. Might be one reason they handed it back. It was at somewhere around 400 or 500. The club, with the revamping the format, it's got people more excited, especially with the venue at the end, and we have the barbecue and all that. So the numbers have been moving up. And last year we had 825 register, but 100 no-shows, which is not unusual. And this year we are about 180 more registered this time of year than compared to last year, which tells me we're going to possibly approach our 1,000 rider limit. And so that limit is imposed by the park. We aren't supposed to go over 1,000, and we think we could get there.
That warms my heart. I mean, it's seriously a couple years back when there was something like it was down, and what do we do to get it going again? It's so good to hear, because it's such a, I mean, it's on everyone's calendar for a year, right? Everyone's looking forward to it. So it's so good to see those numbers coming back.
Yeah, we're very happy about it. You know, the biggest concerns I have are weather and fire. And so, you know, if it's as you know, there's been some years more recently where it's been fire weather that time of year, and the park goes on and off about closing or not, and opening. So we're in close touch with the lead ranger, Cameron Morrison, and the park about how that's going to go. They're extremely helpful and supportive. So they'll do everything they can to keep the park open for us. But that is obviously you can't control everything.
Yeah.
Couple things. Mike, I know you've been trying to say something and I keep cutting you off, but I mean, I cleared up.
Questions.
No, a couple things. First of all, I applaud you guys for embracing the e-bike and making that a category.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just, you know, that maybe that's going to be controversial. Maybe people won't agree, but you know, more people on bikes as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I also want to make a point. I definitely want to dive in, because I think it'll be fascinating to talk about the fastest times that people have made it up this thing. But I also want to make a point that, and it's related to the e-bike thing, we mentioned elite. This is an opportunity for every cyclist, right? And the people will be up there. I don't know. We talk about the fastest time, but I know that there's people that have done it in like 2.5 or 2 hours and 45 minutes. God bless them for coming out. And I don't want anyone to think that this is just necessarily because there's a clock, that it's necessarily a race. It's an event, and it's a fun event. And anyways, I don't have to. I'm just trying to, plug it, because the event at the end is great. The atmosphere is great, and I just want to make sure everyone knows that they're welcome.
Yeah, just to add there, it's not a race, it's a challenge. Challenge yourself up with the mountain.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's challenge yourself to see how fast you can ride up the mountain. And just we are giving prizes just to encourage people. It's not a race against somebody else. It's against you and how best you can do every year on year.
I would add that it's a hybrid. We've had discussions on our little planning team as well about a race versus family. And I said, wait a minute, it can be both. And it really is, because there are definitely competitive folks getting the best time, and there are lots of prizes to win in your age category and overall. Money, we're giving away prizes, medals, money, and hammer product. So you can beat that guy if you want to and be very competitive. But there's very much welcoming for families and anybody of any ability. For example, my wife, she hadn't ridden up the mountain since the 70s on her own bike until last week. And she got a little e-bike, and she was just going to go to the junction to try it out. And she kept going and went to Juniper, and then she made it to the summit. She was so proud of herself, and I don't know if you can see her in there,
Oh
but
yeah.
she's having a great time on her bike, and she signed up immediately to do the e-bike wave of the Mount Diablo Challenge, and that got her going. I've seen all kinds of fathers and mothers with their kids going up the mountain as well. So we've got to keep that going.
yeah. People towing their kids up is crazy. Yeah.
Well, and to your point, I mean, you mentioned like maybe 4 waves of elites, but with 40 people in each. So that's only 160 of the participants. The rest of the group, it's non-elites, families and people that are recreational cyclists that want to challenge themselves. To Raghu's point, it is a challenge, a personal challenge, and also a race for the elites, but or for age groups as well, right? As you mentioned. So I know one of the big things is trying to ride your age. You can ride your age. You're doing good work.
Yep.
So that's kind of a challenge within the challenge. But so to Dave's points, we could look up on Strava the KOM, right? That the Tour of California came through and basically wreck shop on a lot of KOMs around the Bay Area. But in terms of the mountain challenge, do you know the fastest time ever recorded on the mountain challenge? Putting you on the spot here.
I know it's in the 40-minute category, but I don't have the actual specific.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Done enough homework
But
on that
last
one.
year's, what was that? I think we have the right time. Yeah, we can look up on
They're posted,
but they're
but-
yeah.
All right. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be clear, so you said in the beginning it's
11.2.
11.2 and how
From the Athenian school, which is a little
Right.
back from the park. Got to go through a little bit of residential, and then you can pass Southgate and you head up the mountain.
how many feet?
3,850, 3,849, something like that.
I love
Yeah,
how Dave's asking this question like he has no idea. That's hilarious.
I'm just trying to get it out for our
Yeah,
listeners. But
yeah.
I hope I got it right.
I'm trying to put that in perspective because I think you're right. And I knew this at some point, but I do think that it is 40 to 41 minutes. So for anyone who hasn't done this thing, think about what someone just did, 11 miles and 3,300 feet in 40 some odd minutes. It's unbelievable.
It is. Yeah. I have a story. So when we first started making e-bikes, I work for Giant Bicycles.
Okay.
And we had this prototype road e-bike that this bike never actually made production, the version that I had. We did later come with one to market, but this one was a straight prototype. I got an opportunity to pick it up at each of the reps was kind of passing it through California. So I got to pick it up. I brought it to Dave's shop there at Blackhawk, and I put my kit on, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I go, he goes, "Wow, you're getting all kitted up to ride your e-bike?" And I said, yeah, I'm going to go blast up the mountain and see what I can do. And he's just like mocking me, making me feel like like some kind of, I don't know what. I just felt ridiculous, but I'm fully kitted, got my helmet, my shoe. I got the fit dialed. And so I start going up the mountain, and this thing had a top speed. It would assist up to 28 miles an hour. I
Holy
almost
cow.
crashed in one of the corners going uphill because I was going so fast. And you're not used to
Yeah, you wouldn't be.
going 28 miles an hour on them going up
No
for
way.
sure.
Yeah.
But I
Whoa.
just remember there was a point where I passed these two guys, these Mike's bikes. They were just type A elite level riders going really well. And I'm going so fast, it's ridiculous. So I come up on these guys and I just went all the way over and just blasted by them. And I just heard the guy go, holy shit, what was that?
Yeah.
Because at the time, e-bikes were still really new, and especially an e-road bike was almost unheard of.
Oh, interesting.
I
Wow.
never shifted the bike. I left it in the hardest gear the entire time. And I was just able to plow through. But to give you some context, I finished in 40 minutes and 30 some odd seconds. And I wasn't the KOM.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Rohan Dennis was the KOM. I finished slower than Rohan Dennis. And I couldn't even believe, I didn't know any of this while I'm on the mountain. So I get up to the top,
Sure.
I was just like, wow, it was amazing. I killed the whole battery.
Yeah.
Because I stayed in full gas the whole way. And then I just coasted down, rode back to the shop, and took some more grief from Dave about my silliness. And then later when I was looking in, I got a number 2. And then I switched it. They had the opportunity to switch it, or maybe I deleted it. I can't remember, but I didn't want to be up there because it wasn't a sincere effort on a acoustic bike. Strava now has those, the toggles where you can select that it's an e-bike ride now. So you can, there's more integrity to it, but I was still blown away at the fact that as fast as I went up that hill, that someone naturally aspirated did it. It's like, oh my gosh, the levels of these pro athletes, it's just insane. But yeah, the e-bike, Dave is a real big advocate of the e-bike. I think it's kind of funny because he doesn't ride an e-bike. He doesn't own an e-bike. I don't think his wife Sue does. But I'm also a big advocate, and I don't own an e-bike myself. I did for a while, but the e-bike is the gateway. And some people get an e-bike and they get really inspired. They lose a bunch of weight, they improve their life, their fitness, everything gets better in terms of their health. And then in some cases, they even end up getting an acoustic bike and riding an acoustic bike. In many cases, they just get the e-bike and they're completely satisfied. And
in the case of my wife getting this bike recently, it's kind of a social thing, I think, because
yes,
the Valley Spokesman does these regular rides each week. The Mellow Monday, it's called, and the Friendly Friday. Well, those have been kind of locally renamed as the Manic Monday and the Frenzy Friday because you get faster. And she found that she wasn't quite able to keep up with the Mellow Monday riders. And now with her e-bike, like, that's no problem.
yeah,
So that allows that. Plus, I can ride with her on my regular. I didn't realize it's called an acoustic bike. That's helpful. Regular bike with her, and we can now go on more jaunts together.
yeah.
But imagine that, a ride getting faster over time. That must just be a Valley Spokesman thing. It never happens in any other group, right?
Well, I don't know if you've encountered this, Mark, but my wife rides an e-bike also, and we've done these trips where I'll be on my gravel bike, she'll be on her e-bike, and she wants to be all chatty. And I'm having a legitimate effort, and she's just like, wow, isn't it just beautiful? Have you ever noticed how this is and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, yeah, don't talk to me right now. Okay. Unless you want to slow way down. Yeah. So
happened going up Diablo last week with my wife. I'm struggling to keep up with her. And,
yep.
Yeah, that's exactly
Hey,
what happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so where can people find out more information and register?
Yep. We have the website mountdiablochallenge.org, Dave. Um, and we actually started a Facebook ad as well. So, and we have put the posters in stores around the Bay Area. Most of them we mailed some, we put some physically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so if you encounter a poster, there's a QR code. You can point your phone at that. And as Raghu mentioned, mountdiablochallenge.org. You can, if you remember the Valley Spokesman, that website has an events page that leads you right into this. A lot of different ways to get there. Trek is our one of our larger sponsors, and in all the Trek stores locally, you'll see these posters larger and little cards you can take home that have the Mount Diablo Challenge on one side, and on the back, it has a QR code for the bicycle turnout project that I mentioned earlier as well.
Okay.
You said the Trek stores locally. I'm curious, like, do you have this information, like how far the furthest person is traveling to come do this? Like, is it just a Bay Area thing, or do you get people?
Oh, I did a pivot table on that from the registration last year from Switzerland. You know, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Japan
Oh,
is
yeah, this year I see a registrant from Japan.
well represented. You
Yeah.
know, this is
It is
international.
iconic. It is. I mean, it's one of the climbs that you just have to do. And so, yeah, I think it's like the Mount Washington Challenge, right? People set that and put that kind of on their bucket list to get done. So,
We have
Yeah.
our sponsor director Clay Dunning has done the Pikes Peak,
Yep.
and he akins it to that as well.
Yep.
He has a vision actually of it looking more and more like that kind of a venue. It's very, very popular and internationally known. So
And within the US, we have a rider from Hawaii.
Great.
Yeah, and New York, yeah, I think it,
are you looking at them
yeah,
right now?
yeah,
Good.
yeah.
so New York, Hawaii. See, it's a destination ride, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
got over here like 10 states represented, and as well as those other countries I mentioned.
That's
So
great.
people, but you're getting up there. So there is actually a limit to 1,000. So people,
there is.
I don't want to. This is a shameless plug, but they should hurry up and register then if you think you're going to get close to that
Well,
number,
it's
right?
less expensive if you do it now. You know, it did bump up September 1st, and that's an incentive for people to join early, as well as you know, just we want to communicate frequently to let people know that the event's there. And then we cut it off on, I think it's the 26th, the online registration of September, and where we now are taking that data and making those start waves at that point. And then there's a Saturday before at the Alamo Trek store is a packet pickup for people that are pre-registered. And so we hope that, you know, a lot of people will come and get their registration materials then. And that'll reduce the time they need Sunday morning, the day of October 1st. But they could register that morning as well. And
So
Yeah.
I have a thought, Mark. I just wanted to get your opinion too.
okay.
For your podcast listeners, we will offer a code. If anybody who follows your podcast wants to register, we'll give you a $10 discount. How about that?
I like it. Let's do it.
Wow. Okay.
All
Great.
right.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna-
Bike Junkies.
I'm going to sign up. I'm going to sign up as soon as I get the code.
You
So
can't sign up.
Yeah, the code will be maybe later today. I just got the idea. We BJ40 Bike Junkies. It is 40th year of Mount Diablo Challenge. So I'll get the code created and confirm it to you by email, Mike.
Okay.
You can just let your listeners know from starting tomorrow they can start using that code.
That
Love
would
it.
be fantastic.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. Hope we can help you out. That's great news.
So Dave and I have both done it in the past, as we mentioned. But this year we're not going to do it. I don't believe we're gonna be there though. We're
Oh,
gonna set up a little table
Yeah.
and probably at Monte Vista is what we're thinking, and just to meet people that are participating in the challenge, and also you know, one of our goals would be if there are any inspirational stories anybody that's that you know of that you think would be a good guest, that type of thing. We'll be there with a little table. So stop on by, say hello. Give us the hard critiques of our show. We want that. And especially Dave. I know,
Right, right.
yeah, he's more into the critiques than I am, but
Yeah,
um,
it's been,
More
but yeah,
deserving too.
we just ordered some merchandise. We've never had merch before, so I just ordered some stickers. So hopefully the stickers will be here in time. They're online, so stop by, at least say hello. Maybe you get a sticker, maybe not. Hopefully you do. And yeah, so we're gonna try to have some fun with it and support the event in that way instead of writing it this year.
Thank
I,
you.
Sure, we'll let
Randy.
we'll let Randy, our event the director at the Monte Vista, so who takes care of Monte Vista operations.
okay.
So that he can reserve a spot for you guys.
Yeah, we have a map where all the vendors and promoters go.
Great.
So you'll
Okay.
have.
Yep.
And
That sounds like a good time for sure. All right. Well, I think we should probably wrap it up, but I want to thank both of you for joining. Unless there's something else, is there anything else that you guys want to cover?
Anything we missed?
Well, I wanted to mention on the bike turnout project how important that is. And I don't know if I mentioned yet Joe Shammy because he's very much a part of that. And I think I don't know if you've met him, but you certainly have heard about Joe. They now has a moniker of the Legend of Mount Diablo. But I first, touched on the reason where the Mount Diablo started when Joan Walt passed away, and this was done in her memory. And then Joe, a beloved writer, became enamored with riding the mountain every week without fail, and he got close to 500. And this friend of his said, "You might want to let the CEO of Trek know, John Burke, what you're up to, because you're doing it on a Trek bike, and he would really appreciate learning about that." Have you heard this story yet? It's a really interesting
Haven't.
story. I
Yeah.
would love people to hear this. And so Joe got to know John Burke, JB, they call him internally, of Trek Bike. They became fast pen pals because John realized that Joe is something special. If you're in your 80s and you're riding the bike without stopping even through the winter at all and getting up to 500, that's pretty special. And
For sure.
yeah, and he was keeping track of that. He even had to start recounting after he had a minor injury after about 100, and he started over to make it official that he wasn't skipping any weeks. So he got to the 500, and they had a big celebration a couple of years back for Joe. Trek actually sponsored that with a cake and video and everything. And Joe told John, "My next goal is to reach 100,000 miles on my Trek bike before I reach age 87. That'll be next summer, most likely." And then tragically, Joe was killed in a traffic circle in Lafayette, an SUV that didn't see him. And that was it. And John got first an email and said, "Wait, this can't be happening." And he verified it with phone calls and came out to the Alamo Trek store in April, a couple of weeks later, with the rest 200 or so of us there to celebrate Joe's life. And at that point, we had decided to make the Mount Diablo Challenge that year in memory of Joe Shammy. The next thing I know is I'm riding up the mountain, and along comes John Burke, just by happen chance, next to me, and I thank him for putting on the memory, the celebration, and I introduced myself. I was the president of the Mount Valley spokesman, and he was very warm and said, "Well, tell me about your club. What do you guys do?" And I said, "Well, one thing we're doing the next challenge in the memory of Joe Shammy." And he says, "Well, send me an email. I want to be a sponsor." And so that's how we hooked up with Trek. It was almost like Joe pulling strings up there. It just gives me goosebumps to think about it. And since then, Trek has been a great sponsor. Well, back to Joe, his estate has donated $123,000 to continue building more of these bike turnouts. As many people may be aware, due to the focus and energy of Alan Kalin, a retired Army colonel, he has managed to get $1.5 million to build the first set of turnouts, and now up to 45 turnouts. So there's 32 more that are needed to build out the 77 that there's a plan for. And, where are we going to get that money? Well, the estate of Joe Shammy put in $123,000 to kick off a public funding campaign for the bike turnouts.
Wow.
And amazingly, Alan and I are going to Pete Coffee in Danville on Saturday mornings, and we're talking to people mostly in our kits, about turnouts, and every conversation has been very positive and supportive. And next thing we know, first of all, the California State Parks matched the Joe Shammy 123,000. So now we're up to 246. And then out of the blue, a couple donates $250,000 to get that
Wow.
way up there. Now we're at $591,000 towards our goal of 750, all because of Joe Shammy putting in that 123 to get that kicked off.
Incredible.
It's an amazing story. So I just had to get that out there.
Yeah, thank you for
I would
sharing that.
encourage your listeners to check on, the bike turnouts of Mount Diablo, because there's an opportunity here to make that mountain much safer by getting the rest of that build out plan.
What an incredible legacy, right? That's I'm thank you for sharing. I had no idea about any of that. And that's so impressive. And man, it's post-humanum, it's just hard to imagine. I don't think Joe would have ever imagined something like that happening. That's awesome.
Struck a chord with many people, and because, as you mentioned earlier, that mountain's iconic. It's like that means a lot to a lot of people. And the safety reduction has been an 80% reduction in those accidents already, just from the first set that have been put up there.
Yeah.
Speaking from a guy that had a encounter with a Jeep Tomb Raider with a cow pusher on the front, right, that sent me to the hospital. So it is, as Mike said, it's such an incredible legacy, and as you pointed out, but it is just so important. More people are getting on bikes, more people want to do Mount Diablo, so it's just got to be, safety is paramount. So awesome.
We've done a 115 plus podcasts, and we bring up Mount Diablo all the time. Dave and I ride it routinely, and it's just something that we talk about all the time. And our previous host, Bo, he would always remind us, like, we have listeners all over the world. No one knows what Mount Diablo is, but to your point, we have a rider from Switzerland. We've got riders from Japan. So Mount Diablo is something that maybe cyclists from around the world are aware of. And if you are a cyclist from another country and you're listening to this, do yourself a favor, do a little deep dive onto Mount Diablo. It is an incredible climb. It's iconic. And it's one of the all-time greats. I just recently returned from a couple of weeks in Europe, where I rode a lot of the climbs of the Gavia and the Tour de France and etc. And it was incredible. And the roads are amazing. But Mount Diablo holds its own with all of those legendary roads. So if you're from another country, come on out to California.
Bring your bike and your camera, because you're going to want to take pictures at the top for sure. Hey, before we go, I have to share this one story. This is just so that people know what they're up against, right? You can be riding this thing and think, well, okay, because it's an average 8% grade, and there's some 10%. You think this isn't so hard until you get to the end, and it pitches up to about 18% to get up to that last section, right?
Yeah.
The first time I'm doing the challenge, we were going up and I came up on this couple. They were on a tandem, and I come up on them, and just as I'm about to pass them, all I do is hear. I mean, you can see the finish line.
Yeah.
And all I hear the guy go, "Just shut up and pedal."
Yeah. How many times have you said that to yourself?
Oh, I know. Exactly.
Your mind's
Exactly.
racing, like, what are you doing this, you
Yeah.
big dummy? Yeah.
And
Just shut
the
up
other
and
thing
pedal.
the other thing I would recommend is that you'll look it up and find Devil's Elbow, and you're just going to want to make sure that as you come around Devil's Elbow, zip up your jersey, take your best position on the bike because that's where the photographer is. You don't want to be in, you want to be looking pro when you're around that corner. So
Oh, Dave, you're so vain.
I
Come
know it is.
on.
It's just
Who
terrible.
cares? I think the best pictures are when you are completely blown out and it looks like you just did something.
We've
Not
got
when you look like you're on the cover of Pearl Izumi catalog.
Yeah. Well, another funny story. Sorry, I'm rambling, but a friend of mine came around that corner and he did exactly what I said you should do and he started to zip up and got ready, got his picture taken. The next day he looked it up. There was a unicyclist behind him.
Oh, that's probably with basketball, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, but that brings another point. There's unicyclists that do this thing, right?
Yes.
Routinely.
Yeah.
And one guy with a basketball, you're dribbling the whole way up. I mean,
It's weird, but I respect it.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah. There's some off-road unicyclists too that are just, it's wild. Those guys, I don't agree with that at all. Only because it looks like a trip to the emergency room is about to ensue at every turn. But yeah, okay, guys. Well, we got kind of on a tangent, but if you get a bunch of cyclists that have experience on Mount Diablo, we could talk for hours about all the different experiences and the amazing wildlife and all the adventures that we've had over the years on the mountain. It's a great time, and if you've never done it, maybe this year's the Mountain Challenge would be a great opportunity for you to go give it a try. And it's
the 40th, so why not?
And the 40th, and the code is BJ40 for the podcast listeners.
BJ40.
Right.
Bicycle Junkie 40.
It will be tomorrow onwards.
Okay.
I'll
Thank
get
you.
it activated and it will be tomorrow.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for the effort. I know, it's no small feat. So thank Valley Spokesman for, keeping the dream alive and for doing it for so long. And thank you too for all your efforts. Good luck with
I
it.
forgot to mention 150 volunteers. It's a big deal.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
Outstanding. All right. We're going to wrap it up, gang. Obviously, if you want to, not obviously, what am I saying? If you would like to support the Cycle Jerks podcast, you can do so at cyclejerkspodcast.buzzsprout.com. Click on the subscribe button. We appreciate it. If you like what we're doing, please leave us a good review. That helps us. And Raghu and Mark, thank you so much for all that you've done to get the Mount Diablo Challenge out there and as successful as it is. And we'll look for you on October 1st. All right. So
for sure.
yeah, that's going to do it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.